The throne room was massive, built from dark purple stone that seemed to glow in the light. Jake Morrison stood in line with 5 other human soldiers, all wearing their best uniforms. His heart beat faster than it did in combat. Around them, thousands of alien warriors filled the hall. These were the Valorians, tall beings with silver skin and eyes that shone like stars. Every single one of them looked deadly. 6 months ago, Jake and his unit had saved the Valorian Empire from destruction. The enemy had trapped their fleet in the Crimson Nebula. The Valorians were brave, but they fought the same way they always did. The enemy knew their tactics. The Valorians were losing badly. Then the human forces arrived. Jake had suggested a crazy plan to his commander. Instead of fighting head-on, they used the nebula's radiation to hide. They hit the enemy from 7 different angles at once. It worked. The Valorians won because humans thought differently. Now Emperor Theron sat on his throne looking down at them. He was huge, even for a Valorian with scars covering his arms. Next to him stood his daughters. Princess Kara wore battle armor covered in metals. She looked like she could kill someone with just a glance. 2 other princesses stood beside her, both warriors. They held their weapons proudly. In the shadows at the end of the platform, Jake noticed a 4th princess. She was smaller than her sisters, and she tried to make herself invisible. She wore a simple purple dress instead of armor. Her silver hair fell loose around her face, while her sisters stared straight ahead like statues. This one's eyes moved around the room. She looked curious about everything. "For saving our empire, we offer you any reward within our power to grant," Emperor Theron announced. His voice boomed through the hall.
"Name your prize and it shall be yours." The first soldier asked for a warship.
The crowd cheered. The second wanted a fortune in platinum. More cheers. The third asked for land on one of their colony worlds. The 4th requested advanced weapons technology. The 5th asked for a command position in the combined fleet. Then it was Jake's turn. Every eye in the massive hall focused on him. He stepped forward and looked up at the royal family. Princess Kara met his gaze with a warrior's pride. The other military princesses did the same. The 4th princess looked down, as if hoping no one would remember she existed. But Jake had noticed something. When he first entered the hall, he had tucked a small book into his uniform jacket. Just the corner showed. It was his copy of the Odyssey, battered from being read so many times. When the 4th princess saw it, her eyes went wide. Just for a moment, her face showed pure joy. Then she hid it again and looked at the floor. Jake took a breath. "I choose Princess Lyra Vas Valoria," he said clearly. "I ask for her hand in marriage." The throne room went completely silent. Then everyone started talking at once. Valorian warriors shouted in confusion. The human ambassador's face went pale. Jake's commander looked at him like he had lost his mind. "What is the meaning of this?" Princess Kara demanded. Her hand moved to her weapon. "You mock us by choosing our weakest member?" Emperor Theron held up his hand for silence. His face showed no emotion, but Jake could see the calculation in his eyes. The Emperor was probably relieved to get rid of his disappointing daughter. But he was also insulted that the human hero saw so little value in Valorian honors. Princess Lyra looked up, and Jake saw shock and pain in her eyes. She thought this was a cruel joke. She thought he was making fun of her in front of everyone. "You understand what you ask?" the Emperor said slowly. "This daughter has no military skill. She has won no battles. She brings no honor to her name. You could have wealth, power, territory. Why choose her?" Jake kept his eyes on Lyra. She was shaking slightly, waiting for the punchline, waiting for him to laugh and say he wanted something else. "She's exactly what I want," Jake said. "I choose her freely." The Emperor leaned back in his throne. For a long moment he studied Jake's face. Then he looked at his daughter, the one he had always ignored. "Lyra," he said, "do you accept this?" Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. If it pleases you, father." "Then it is done," Emperor Theron announced. "The human hero claims Princess Lyra Vas Valoria as his prize. Let no one question it." The ceremony continued, but Jake barely heard it. Guards led them through several halls to a private room where they could speak. Other humans and Valorians came and went, making arrangements. Through it all, Lyra stood against the far wall, looking at him like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. Finally, they were alone. Jake walked over to her slowly, not wanting to scare her. She straightened her back but didn't run. "Have you read Homer?" Jake asked quietly. Lyra stared at him. Her mouth opened, then closed. "What?" Jake pulled the book from his jacket and held it up. Homer, the Odyssey. I saw how you looked at it. Have you read it? Tears formed in Lyra's eyes. Yes, she whispered. I found a translation in the Imperial Archives 5 years ago. I've read it 7 times. How do you know about... She stopped, confused. Why did you choose me? Was it to insult my father? To make a point? I chose you because everyone else in that room was trying to be seen, Jake said. But you were the only one who looked like you were actually seeing something. When everyone looked at duty and honor, you looked at a book. That told me everything. Lyra wiped her eyes quickly. I don't understand you. I'm worthless by my people's standards. I failed every combat test. I'm an embarrassment to the royal family. You're a war hero. You could have had anything, Jake smiled. I noticed you reading Dostoevsky at the feast last month. You tried to hide it, but I saw. Anyone who reads Dostoevsky at a military banquet is interesting to me. You saw that? Lyra looked amazed. No one ever sees me. I see you, Jake said simply. And I'd like to know you if you're willing. Lyra studied his face for a long time. You're serious. You actually chose me on purpose, yes. Why? Because I think you're remarkable. And I think you've never had anyone tell you that before. Lyra was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I haven't, not once in my entire life. She took a shaky breath. What happens now? Now you come to Earth with me. If you want to, I won't force you. And if I say no, then I'll ask for something else and you can go back to your archives. Lyra looked at the book in his hands. What's your favorite part of the Odyssey? When Odysseus finally comes home and only his dog recognizes him. Everyone else sees a beggar, but the dog sees who he really is. Jake met her eyes. What's yours? When Penelope tests him with the bed, Lyra said softly. She needs to know it's really him, that he remembers their secret. She paused. I'll come with you to Earth. I have nothing to lose, and maybe something to gain. Fair enough, Jake said. They stood there in the quiet room, 2 people from different worlds, connected by stories and the courage to see each other clearly. Lyra had lived in the palace her entire life, but she had always been invisible. She stood in her quarters now, packing the few things that mattered to her. Books, mostly. A datapad with more books stored on it, some writing instruments. She didn't own much else. Her earliest memory was of her 10th birthday. Every Valorian child took the combat trials that day. It determined their worth, their future, everything. Lyra remembered standing in the training arena while Instructor Vex watched her with cold eyes. Attack the drone, he had ordered. Lyra had tried. She really had. But when the practice drone moved toward her, all she could think about was how it would hurt. She hesitated. The drone knocked her down easily. She got up and tried again. And again. Each time she failed, weak. Vex had written in his report. No killer instinct, no warrior spirit, unsuitable for military service. In Valorian culture, that was the worst thing anyone could say about you. Her father had looked at her with disappointment. Her sisters had looked at her with shame. From that day forward, she became the invisible princess. But Lyra had found something else that day. After the trials, crying and alone, she had wandered into the Imperial Archives. It was a place few Valorians visited. They cared about weapons and battles, not old records. But the archives held something precious. They held the histories of every species the Valorians had ever met. That's where Lyra discovered Earth. The first file she read was about human military tactics. Boring to her then. But the next file was different. It talked about human art, music, literature, philosophy. Humans didn't just fight. They created things. They asked questions. They wrote stories about their feelings and dreams. Lyra had fallen in love with humanity that day. Over the years, she taught herself English. The archives had language files. She read everything she could find about Earth. Shakespeare and Steinbeck, Plato and Confucius. She listened to Beethoven and the Beatles. She studied Van Gogh's paintings and Kurosawa's films. While her sisters trained with weapons, Lyra trained her mind. While they won medals, she won nothing. But she learned to think in ways no other Valorian did. She learned that strength could be gentle, that power could be quiet, that victory could mean understanding instead of conquest. Her family forgot about her most of the time. That was fine. She spent her days in the archives with only Archivist Kell for company. He was old, too old to fight, so he was allowed to tend the records. He never judged her. You have a gift, young princess, he told her once. You see connections others miss. My gift is useless here, Lyra had replied. Perhaps. Or perhaps you simply haven't found where you belong yet. Now, standing in her quarters, Lyra wondered if Kel had been right. Jake Morrison had seen something in her. She didn't understand what, but he had seen it. A knock on her door made her jump. Princess Kara walked in without waiting for permission. She wore her armor as always, weapons at her side. She looked at Lyra's small pile of belongings and frowned. Is this all you're taking? Kara asked. I don't need much, Lyra said quietly. Kara walked around the room. They hadn't spoken privately in years. I don't understand what happened today. That human chose you. Why? I don't know. He's a decorated warrior. He could have had wealth, power. Instead, he picks our family's embarrassment. Kara's voice wasn't cruel exactly, but it wasn't kind either. It was confused. What did you do? Nothing. I stood there. He chose me. Kara studied her youngest sister. Are you afraid? Lyra thought about it. Yes, but I'm also curious. Earth sounds fascinating. Fascinating. Kara shook her head. You're so strange, Lyra, you always have been. Father hoped you would change as you grew, that you'd find your warrior spirit, but you just got more strange. I know I'm a disappointment, Lyra said. It was a fact she had accepted long ago. That's not... Kara stopped. She seemed to struggle with words. I came to tell you to be careful. Humans are not like us. They think differently. I know. I've studied them for years. Kara looked surprised. You have? Yes, their literature, their philosophy, their history. I probably know more about humans than any Valorian alive. And you never told anyone? Lyra almost laughed. Who would I tell? Who would care? Kara was quiet for a moment. I would have cared, maybe, if you had told me. It was the kindest thing Kara had said to her in years. Lyra felt tears threaten but pushed them away. Thank you for coming to say goodbye. I'm not saying goodbye. I'm saying be careful. Kara moved to the door, then paused. That human, Jake, he looked at you like you mattered. No one here has ever looked at you like that. Maybe he sees something we missed. After Kara left, Lyra sat on her bed. She thought about Jake's question. Have you read Homer? Such a simple question, but it had changed everything. He knew about books. He cared about stories. He had seen her looking at his copy of the Odyssey and remembered it. Someone had finally seen her. The next day, preparations began for the journey to Earth. Lyra met with diplomats and officials. They all treated her the same way they always had, like she was barely there. Except Jake. He checked on her several times, making sure she had everything she needed. Are you okay? He asked during one visit. I think so. This is all very strange. I know. Moving to a new world is hard. He smiled. But Earth has thousands of libraries, museums, concert halls, universities, places where thinking matters as much as fighting. Lyra felt hope bloom in her chest. Really? Really? Humans value all kinds of strength. Physical, sure, but also intellectual, creative, emotional. We celebrate people who write books and paint pictures and discover new science. Warriors are important, but so are teachers and artists and philosophers. That sounds impossible, Lyra whispered. It's not. You'll see. Jake pulled out his Odyssey again. Here, you should have this. I have 3 more copies at home. Lyra took the book carefully. It was worn and loved, with notes in the margins. I can't take your book. You can. I want you to have it. Besides, you'll need something to read on the ship. That night, Lyra read through the Odyssey again, looking at Jake's notes. He had underlined passages about home and belonging, about being lost and finding your way, about being recognized for who you truly are. Maybe, she thought, maybe this human really did see her. And maybe, for the first time in her life, she was going somewhere she could actually belong. The thought terrified her, but it also excited her in a way nothing ever had before. The transport ship was called the USS Defiance. It was smaller than Valorian warships, but faster. Jake showed Lyra to her quarters, a simple room with a bed, desk, and window showing the stars. After weeks in space, they would reach Earth. Lyra spent the first 3 days in her room, too nervous to explore. She read Jake's Odyssey over and over. She stared out the window at space, wondering what she had done. She had left the only home she had ever known to go with a stranger to an alien world. On the 4th day, Jake knocked on her door. Want to get dinner? The mess hall has decent food. Lyra hesitated, then agreed. The mess hall was full of human soldiers. They stared at her when she entered. She was the only Valorian on the ship. She tried to make herself small the way she always did, but Jake pulled out a chair for her at his table. "Lyra, meet some of my unit. This is Ben, Carlos, and Amy. They were with me at the Crimson Nebula." The three soldiers nodded at her. They looked curious but not mean. "You're the princess, right?" Amy asked. "The one Jake chose instead of a warship?" She grinned. "Best decision he ever made. We all thought he was crazy, but now we get it." "You do?" Lyra asked quietly. "Sure, anyone can fly a warship. But how many people can quote ancient Earth poetry and Valorian battle tactics? Jake told us about you." Lyra looked at Jake in surprise. He shrugged. "I told them you're brilliant, that you've studied human culture for years. They were impressed." For the first time in her life, Lyra felt something strange. Pride. These humans thought she was interesting. Not disappointing. Not useless. Interesting. Over the next weeks, Lyra slowly came out of her shell. She ate meals with Jake and his friends. She walked around the ship. She even visited the observation deck where humans gathered to look at the stars. One night she found Jake there alone. He was staring out at space with sad eyes. "Are you okay?" she asked. Jake smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just thinking. This was Danny's favorite spot. My best friend. He died at the Crimson Nebula." Lyra sat down next to him. "I'm sorry. He was the one who got me into reading, actually. Grew up poor like me. Joined the military at 18 like me. But Danny always had books. He said stories made us more than just soldiers." Jake's voice was rough. "I lived and he didn't. Sometimes I don't know why." "Survivor's guilt," Lyra said softly. "Dostoevsky wrote about it. So did many others. It's a human thing, feeling guilty for surviving when others didn't. Is it a Valorian thing too? I don't know. Valorians don't talk about feelings much. We're supposed to be strong." Lyra paused. "But I think maybe that's our weakness. We don't know how to process pain, so we just push it down and call it honor." Jake looked at her with surprise. "That's really insightful." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Lyra asked, "Why did you really choose me?" "You can tell me the truth. I won't be upset." Jake thought about his answer carefully. "At that ceremony, I looked at your family. Your sisters stood there like weapons on display. Perfect warriors. Everyone in that room knew their value. They had medals and scars to prove it. But you stood in the shadows and you looked aware. Like you were actually thinking about what was happening instead of just performing." He continued. "Then I saw you notice my book. For just a second, your whole face changed. You looked happy. Really genuinely happy. And I thought, this is someone who understands that there's more to life than fighting. This is someone interesting. Someone I want to know." Lyra felt her eyes water. "No one has ever wanted to know me before." "Then they're all fools," Jake said simply. Over the remaining days of the journey, they talked for hours. Lyra told Jake about growing up invisible, about finding the archives, about teaching herself English by reading Shakespeare out loud in empty rooms, about dreaming of Earth but never thinking she'd actually see it. Jake told her about his childhood in a poor neighborhood, about joining the military to escape poverty, about reading books during long deployments because they made him feel less alone, about losing Danny and carrying that weight every day. "You know what I learned?" Jake said one evening. "There are different kinds of strength. Physical strength wins battles, but mental and emotional strength wins wars. Your people are amazing warriors, but they only know one way to think. That makes them predictable. We beat them at the Crimson Nebula because we thought differently." "My father would never understand that," Lyra said. "Maybe not, but you do, and I think that's exactly what the galaxy needs right now. People who can bridge different ways of thinking." Finally, the ship approached Earth. Lyra stood at the observation window and watched the blue and green planet grow larger. She had seen pictures, but this was real. This was Earth. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Wait until you see it up close," Jake said. "We're landing in New Seattle. Mountains to the east, ocean to the west. My sister Kate lives there. She's excited to meet you." "Excited? Why?" "Because I told her about you. About how smart you are. How you've read more human literature than most humans. She thinks you're fascinating." There was that word again. Fascinating, not disappointing. Not worthless, fascinating. The ship landed at a military base. When the doors opened, Lyra took her first breath of Earth air. It smelled different from Valoria. Sweeter somehow, richer. A young woman ran up to them. She had Jake's smile. "You must be Lyra. I'm Kate, Jake's sister. It's so good to meet you." Kate hugged her. Actually hugged her. Lyra stood frozen, not knowing what to do. "Valorians didn't hug. Sorry," Kate said, stepping back. "Too much?" "No, it's nice, just new." They drove through the city and Lyra stared out the window in amazement. Earth was so diverse. Buildings of every style. People of different colors and sizes. Signs in multiple languages. Music coming from somewhere. The smell of food she didn't recognize. "Overwhelming?" Jake asked. "Yes, but in a good way." Lyra watched everything with wide eyes. It's also alive. Valoria is beautiful, but it's all the same. This is chaos and order mixed together. That's humanity in a nutshell, Kate laughed. Jake's apartment was small but comfortable. Books covered every wall. A window looked out at mountains in the distance. It felt safe. That first night on Earth, Lyra stood at the window and looked at the city lights. Jake came to stand beside her. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think," Lyra said slowly, "I think maybe I've been looking for this my whole life. A place where I don't have to be invisible, where being different is okay." "More than okay," Jake said. "Different is celebrated here. You'll see." For the first time in her life, Lyra felt something she had never felt before. She felt hope. Real, genuine hope that maybe she could belong somewhere. That maybe she could be valued for exactly who she was. Earth, she thought, might actually feel like home. 3 months passed. Lyra learned to love Earth in ways she never expected. Jake took her everywhere. Museums where humans preserved their art and history. Libraries with millions of books in hundreds of languages. Concerts where music made her cry. Universities where people debated ideas instead of settling things with violence. She met Jake's friends. His sister Kate became someone Lyra could talk to about anything. She learned to eat Earth food, though some of it was too spicy for her. She walked through parks and saw trees she had only read about. She watched movies and listened to music and felt more alive than she ever had. Most importantly, she and Jake grew closer. They spent evenings reading together, discussing philosophy and history. They cooked meals side by side. They talked about their dreams and fears. Slowly, carefully, Lyra began to feel something she had never felt before. Love. Real love. Not the duty kind. The kind that made her heart race when Jake smiled at her. She thought maybe he felt it too from the way he looked at her. From how he always asked her opinion on things. From how he made her feel like the most important person in any room. Then the message came from Valoria. Lyra was reading in the apartment when Jake came home looking serious. He held a data pad. His face was troubled. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Your father sent a message. Actually, several messages. To me, to Earth's government, to everyone." Jake sat down heavily. "There's a crisis on Valoria." Lyra's stomach dropped. "What kind of crisis?" "A military faction is angry about our marriage. They say it's shameful that you, a princess, were given to a human. They say it insults Valorian honor. They're threatening to break the alliance between our peoples." "Oh," Lyra said quietly. She had known this happiness couldn't last. "So what happens now?" "Your father demands you return. Either that or he'll disown you completely." Jake looked miserable. "Earth's government is involved now. They're saying the alliance is too important to risk. They want me to annul the marriage." Lyra felt her heart crack. Of course, she had always been worthless to her people. Why should Earth risk peace for her? "I understand," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I'll return to Valoria. We can annul everything. Pretend it never happened." "Lyra, no, that's not what I want. But it's what everyone needs. The alliance matters more than my feelings." Before Jake could respond, his communication device beeped. "General Price wants to see me now." He looked torn. "Will you be okay?" Lyra nodded, not trusting her voice. After Jake left, she sat in the quiet apartment and let herself cry. She had been stupid to hope. Stupid to think she could have happiness. She was the invisible princess. She was meant to be forgotten. The next few days were terrible. Politicians argued. Diplomats negotiated. News services talked about the crisis constantly. Lyra heard herself called the worthless princess and the diplomatic disaster on Earth's news channels. It hurt, but she was used to it. Jake tried to talk to her, but Lyra pulled away. She couldn't bear to see the choice in his eyes. Stay with her and destroy the alliance, or let her go and save his world. It wasn't fair to make him choose. Then Princess Kara arrived on Earth. She came as an official envoy surrounded by guards. She requested a meeting with Jake and Lyra. They met in a formal conference room with diplomats watching. Kara stood in her full battle armor, impressive and terrifying. Jake Morrison, I come with an offer from the Valorian Empire. Renounce your claim to Lyra. In return, we offer you command of a fleet, land, wealth beyond measure. True honors worthy of your achievements, Jake stood. No, you refuse without even considering? I don't need to consider. I chose Lyra. That hasn't changed. Kara looked frustrated. Why, explain it to me. She's weak. She has no military value. She brings shame to our family. Why choose her over everything else? She's not weak, Jake said, his voice hard. She's thoughtful, kind, and brilliant. She's brave enough to be herself in a culture that despises her for it. She's read more, learned more, understood more than most people ever will. If you think that's weakness, then you don't understand what strength really is. Kara stared at him. You actually believe that? Yes. For the first time, Kara looked at her sister. Really looked at her. Lyra, is this true? Have you been studying all this time? Lyra found her voice. Yes. I learned about humanity because warriors were the only thing valued on Valoria. I wanted to understand a culture that valued other things. I learned 5 human languages. I studied your philosophy, art, history, and science. I probably know more about Earth than most humans. Why didn't you ever tell anyone? Who would care? I was already worthless. Having knowledge you consider useless would only make it worse. Kara was quiet for a long moment. I never thought of it that way. I just thought you were weak, broken somehow. Maybe I am by your standards, Lyra said. But Jake is right. There are different kinds of strength. I'll never be a warrior, but I can do things you can't. I can understand other cultures. I can build bridges between worlds. That's worth something, isn't it? Before Kara could answer, the door opened. An Earth official entered. Jake Morrison, I need to speak with you. The government has made a decision. They moved to another room. Lyra waited with her sister. The silence was uncomfortable. Finally, Kara spoke. I've been jealous of you, Lyra laughed bitterly. Jealous of me? Yes, I have medals and honors, but I've never had anyone look at me the way Jake looks at you. Like I matter beyond my skills with weapons. Like I'm a person, not just a warrior. Kara's voice was rough. You found something real. I've only ever found duty. I'm going to lose it, Lyra whispered. They're going to make us separate. Maybe not. Maybe there's another way. Jake returned, looking determined. We're going back to Valoria. Both of us together. Jake, no. It's too dangerous. I don't care. I'm not losing you because some people can't see your value. We're going to address the council. We're going to make them understand. And if they don't, then we'll figure something else out. But I'm not giving up on you. Lyra felt tears run down her face. You'd risk everything for me? Yes, because you matter. Because I love you. And because sometimes you have to fight for what's right, not just what's easy. Lyra stood and walked to him. For the first time, she let herself be brave. I love you too. I have for a while. I was just too scared to say it. Jake pulled her into his arms. Behind them, Kara watched with an expression Lyra had never seen before. It looked almost like respect. We leave tomorrow, Jake said. Time to show your people what you're really worth. The Grand Assembly Hall was even larger than the throne room. Thousands of Valorian leaders filled the space, representing every clan and world in the Empire. They were all warriors. They all believed in the same things, and they were all angry. War Master Krell stood at the center, his armor covered in battle scars. He was the one leading the opposition. This marriage is an insult to our empire, he declared. Princess Lyra is our weakest member. By choosing her, the human mocks us. He tells us we are worth nothing. The crowd roared agreement. Lyra sat with Jake in the accused section, feeling smaller than she ever had. Her father sat on his throne, watching silently. Her sister stood with the other warriors. Only Kara looked uncertain. The human will annul this marriage, Krell continued, or we will consider it an act of war. We do not need the human alliance. We were warriors for thousands of years before they arrived. We will be warriors long after they are gone. Emperor Theron raised his hand for silence. Jake Morrison, you have asked to address this council. This is unprecedented. No outsider has ever spoken here. But you saved our empire, so we will hear you speak. Jake stood. Lyra wanted to pull him back down to protect him from all these angry warriors. But he walked confidently to the center of the hall. Thank you, Emperor. I'll be direct. You're right that Princess Lyra isn't a warrior. She can't fight like her sisters. She won't win battles with weapons. And yes, I chose her knowing all of that, the crowd murmured. Krell smiled. You admit it then. You chose our shame. You insult us. No, I chose your greatest unused resource. And if you can't see that, then you're the ones who are weak. The hall erupted. Warriors shouted insults. Guards moved forward. But Emperor Theron held up his hand again. Let him speak. I want to hear this, Jake continued, his voice carrying through the hall. Your empire is powerful. You've conquered 200 worlds. You're brilliant warriors, but you're predictable. You fight the same way every time. You value the same things every time. Your enemies study you, learn your patterns, and use them against you. We won the Crimson Nebula battle because humans think differently. We value different things. We use tactics you would never consider because we're not all warriors. We have scientists, artists, philosophers, and yes, warriors too. That diversity makes us flexible. It makes us creative. It makes us unpredictable, Krell interrupted.
What does this have to do with the worthless princess?
Everything, Jake said. You call her worthless because she doesn't fight. But she spent her entire life studying cultures, understanding how different species think. She knows more about humanity than any Valorian alive. She speaks 5 of our languages. She understands our values, our fears, our dreams. That knowledge is power. He looked directly at the Emperor. You're facing enemies who study you, who know how you think. You need people who can think differently, who can understand other cultures, who can find solutions that don't involve fighting. Princess Lyra can do that. She's been training for it her whole life, and you never even noticed. Lyra felt her heart pounding. Jake was defending her. Actually defending her value lies, Krell said. She's learned nothing useful. She reads children's stories and useless philosophy. Jake pulled out a data pad. Actually, she wrote this. It's an analysis of your recent conflicts. She identified patterns in how your enemies fight you. She predicted 3 of their last 5 strategies based on understanding their cultures. She did this in her spare time on Earth just to stay sharp. He tossed the data pad to the Emperor. Theron read it, his eyes widening slightly. He passed it to his military advisors. They read it and whispered urgently. Jake continued. You want to know why I chose her? Not because she's weak, because she's strong in ways you don't recognize. The galaxy is changing. It's not enough to win battles anymore. You need to win peace. You need to build alliances, understand enemies, find solutions that last. Warriors can't do that alone. You need people like Lyra. The hall was quieter now. People were actually listening. Then Lyra surprised herself. She stood up. Her voice shook at first but grew stronger. Jake is right. I'm not a warrior. I never will be. But I've spent my life learning. I know 17 languages. I've studied 40 different cultures. I can tell you why the Draxians hate you, and it's not what you think. I can tell you how to negotiate with the Kelvin Collective without insulting them. I can tell you what humans value and why they fight. She looked at her father. You had 5 children, father. 4 warriors and 1 scholar. Maybe that was the universe's way of telling you something. Maybe you need both kinds of strength. Princess Kara stepped forward. Everyone stared. My sister is right. I've been thinking about this since I visited Earth. I'm a warrior. I'm good at it. But when I met Jake's people, I couldn't understand them. They confused me. Lyra understood them instantly because she studied them. In a galaxy full of different species, that skill might be more valuable than any weapon. She turned to the council. I propose we create a new position. Cultural Integration Director. Someone who helps us understand and work with allied species. Someone who can prevent conflicts before they start. And I nominate Princess Lyra for this position. The hall exploded with discussion. Emperor Theron stood and everyone fell silent. I have been a warrior my entire life, he said slowly. I valued strength above all else. I was disappointed in Lyra because she didn't share that strength. But perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps there are different kinds of strength and I was too blind to see it. He looked at Lyra. You studied humans while I ignored them. You learned languages while I learned battle tactics. You built knowledge while I built armies. And now, when we need to maintain alliances, you're prepared and I'm not. He turned to the council. I accept Princess Kara's proposal. Lyra will become our first cultural integration director. She will help us build lasting peace with our allies. And her marriage to Jake Morrison will stand. It symbolizes the bridge we must build between our cultures. War Master Krell protested, but he was overruled. The council voted. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. The marriage would stand. Lyra had a purpose. Finally, after a lifetime of being invisible, She was seen after the council dismissed. Lyra stood in the Imperial Gardens with Jake. The purple flowers bloomed around them, and 2 suns set in the distance. "I can't believe that worked," Lyra whispered. "I can. You've always been remarkable." They just finally noticed. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing me instead of wealth or power?" Jake took her hand. "Never. I got something better. I got to see someone brilliant finally be recognized for it." Lyra smiled. "You gave me something too. You gave me permission to exist, to be myself, to be valued for who I am instead of who I'm not." They stood together watching the sun set. 6 months ago, Lyra had been invisible, worthless, forgotten. Now she had purpose, love, a future. Princess Kara joined them, bringing news. "The Kelvin Collective wants to open new trade negotiations. Father wants you to consult Lyra. He says your knowledge could prevent misunderstandings." Lyra looked at Jake, then at her sister. "I can do that." As they walked back toward the palace, Lyra felt something she never had before. She felt like she belonged, like she mattered, like she was exactly who she was supposed to be. The forgotten princess had become indispensable. And it all started because one human soldier saw her when everyone else looked away. Sometimes, Lyra thought, the greatest strength is simply being brave enough to see clearly. Jake had that strength, and now thanks to him so did she.